Welcome YouTube and true believers all. I tried to quote Stan Lee, but I can't quote him. Anyway, I'm here back with another video. I'm continuing my Adamary literary elements video series. I actually did Antagonist just a little while ago. I'm uploading it right now. Right now, I'm recording the Love Interest series. Now, is it important to understand the reasons why love interests are so crucial in a narrative? And this is something that was discussed. I'm actually taking an English course right now in college. But this was something that was discussed heavily. Why a love interest is very important in a story. Now, the basics of a love interest are very simple. And some people don't understand why this happens, and this is where a lot of authors and a lot of stories get into trouble because they miss the point of a love interest. The purpose of a love interest is a tool, a literary tool that's used by the author to give the protagonist and usually a host of other characters some kind of a moral benchmark and a push. When the individual, the protagonist, faces some form of adversity, the love interest is used basically as his rock. That's basically what the love interest is. And the reason why a lot of authors get into trouble is that when they're using the love interest, not only do they make a very bad love interest and a very unhealthy romance, and this is usually done in contemporary romance novels and shows. The reason why it's bad is because not only that's not how love works, and for the reader, it exposes them to a very unhealthy view of relationships and just people in general, but that's something entirely different. I'm not going to even get into that bowl of apples. But the reason why you get into trouble is because not only is behavioral-wise, the love interest or whoever, depending on if it's male, if the protagonist is male or female, and depending like how you're writing it, the love interest could be male or female. The love interest can be used as a way of undermining not only the protagonist but the story. And I'll give you a very classic example. And since this is an anime kind of driven kind of literary elements, I'm going to use Naruto as a classic example. You're all familiar of the whole Naruto Sakura kind of very contrived romance. That's not how love works. The reason why love does not work this way is because people don't work this way. And this is something contemporary romance does, and this annoys me, is because, one, the way love usually works, and at least it's supposed to work, is that you meet someone, usually early in life, and you develop and you grow and you know each other, and eventually when you reach some form of adulthood, usually maybe late teens, early 20s, that's when the romance begins to happen. And usually it's done and I'm kind of conservative, but it's usually done in a very conservative, respectful light because you grew up with this person. This idea, this contemporary notion that you meet someone in high school and you have some kind of argument with another individual and you have this very convoluted, unhealthy love triangle that ends up with you victorious and the other person's resentful, and then the person loves you and it's all happily ever after. That's not how life works. Sorry to break some people's bubbles. I probably made some people mad, but that's not how life works. And the reason why this hurts the novel is because usually an author, even if it's fiction or fantasy, it's usually written in some way that has some kind of humanistic kind of believability. It usually encompasses very simple kind of moral messages, usually something like honor or honesty or courage or, the classical bravado. But a love interest is meant to reinforce these ideals. This is something that can be done, but it's usually not done simply because people don't like reading it, is having the love interest kind of as the I don't want. I'm bringing in the Bible here, but the whole kind of Samson Delilah kind of thing, where the love interest is actually secretly the antagonist of the individual, and then the protagonist was overcome the former lover, and you get in this whole very contrived, and it's not done because people don't like that. They don't like the idea that they're going to sit there and pay money or read a book or watch a movie where the love interest ends up betraying the protagonist. It just feels like you've been cheated. No one likes that. No one likes that. A sad kind of story like that. But you have the kind of love interest usually kind of undermining whatever moral message or whatever narrative or whatever goal you're trying to do, whatever the protagonist is trying to do. It undermines that. And when you have an element that's undermining your story in a way that is meant to reinforce your story, and I don't know where authors got this notion, which is one of the reasons why I personally tell people or I promote people not to watch modern television because it promotes this. You have an individual that's undermining your message but simultaneously supposed to promote it. You need to pick what your character is. You just have to. You can't have a character undermining the very thing that they're trying to promote. If you're promoting honesty, you can't have someone cheat and then they get back together and it's okay. I mean, you can, and if that's your story, then fine, but it's usually done horribly. Now, if you intend to use a love interest, and most authors do, like I said before, he must reinforce whatever kind of goal you're trying to portray in the story. And if he does not do that, if he's not the push and does not give the direction for the protagonist, you have not only created a bad love interest, you've created a terrible story. And this is how, and usually in most stories, it's usually a very easy classic example is having a male character, and I'm sorry, but this is the way it's usually written contemporarily and even past or in kind of past stories. You have the protagonist as a male. He's a hero, usually a warrior or something like that. Love interest, princess from some faraway kingdom. Evil guys trying to take over the world or trying to like cause mayhem or whatever. Hero grabs his sword or grabs his weapons, goes with the princess to go fight the bad guy. Protagonist brings it down himself, and the love interest basically sits there and says, don't worry, you can do it, I believe in you, you're our only hope. And then, like, that reinforces courage or whatever, and then the protagonist goes and confronts the antagonist and is victorious in the story ends. That's the resolution. That's usually what you do, and you can give, like, your love interest, kind of like the trials of love and kind of like that, like, that's how life is, and you can write it like that. But you have to write it in such a way that not only can you resolve it in a way that's almost equal to the way the problem began. So let's say you get into an argument. The story says, the author, like in one chapter says, two individuals get into an argument because they feel the other isn't doing enough. They separate. They begin to realize how much they need each other. They come back. They reconcile. Everything's good. That's the way love is. And well, not really, but it's more realistic than this neo romance kind of driven narrative. So overview: love interest reinforces the elements of the story that you're trying to push. Reinforces the character to do the things you're trying to push. Is supportive and usually simultaneously usually has some kind of skill set that allows them to do certain things that the character, the protagonist can do. And also simultaneously, the love interest can do things that the protagonist, seeing himself, may be incapable of doing. If your protagonist is usually kind of a combat-heavy, kind of warrior-driven person, the love interest can be a more political and people person. So you're dealing with both spectrums of reality with two people who get together and resolve the story. This has been NBen24 signing off.